took a right turn here all of a sudden, but, so let's go back then to the sheetrock question versus the occupancy question in a commercial
Well,
setting.
commercial typically, commercial, believe me, they are not going to occupy without
Right.
a
So maybe,
certificate of occupancy. And commercial industrial sometimes don't have sheetrock, so you have nothing to tie it to.
so I'm just thinking maybe that's really where we need to focus our benefit to those, to that end user is commercial. We don't have a problem with as long as it's an occupancy permit type of a deal. We're probably worried about 1% of practically nothing here for the housing.
But I still want to make sure that Joanne's staff has something that they can actually enforce and that doesn't become a can of worms and a nightmare for them.
Yeah, and the other thing, the other nightmare I don't want to get into again is remember the people up on the hill who all of a sudden discovered that what they thought was their backyard was in fact city property. Because the builder had put the fence over there and the sprinklers over there and so forth. The lesson really is that, in my mind, is that caveat emptor is a nice phrase, but you really can't depend on average everyday people who buy 2 or 3 houses in their entire lifetime to be very knowledgeable about the process. The reason that we have inspections is to protect them from that. And so if I'm going to make a mistake here, I want to make the mistake on the side of protecting the homeowner. Part 2, the only advantage that I can see for a residential developer would not be for one-off builders, but if somebody's building a subdivision, by signing up and deferring their impact fees, they have vested the project in the current regulatory environment.
At least for a year.
Which provides certainty for them that they would not otherwise have, especially as fluid as the regulatory environment at the state level is.
We do have a lot of subdivisions that have a lot of lots left in them.
Yes, I actually calculated all that for Paul Lewis of what our inventory is.
John?
I was originally a supporter for residential being high occupancy. I'm not really sure that between drywall and occupancy that it's a big deal. And I think that if we can go with drywall, let's work that. If we start getting some complaints, maybe from some developers that say, listen, this is really unreasonable or it doesn't really benefit us in any way, we can always come back and review it. Absolutely. And change it at the end. But I think just for discussion's sake and to really put everything to rest, I think residential drywall would really be a good start. And then for commercial, I think we're talking about occupancy.
Yes.
Yeah. So
that's not a problem with having.
I think that's a very good approach, John, because this is a pilot program, and just like the zoning code, I mean, we have these grand ideas, and then on the ground they don't work. So I'll be back again, a month going, well, we never thought about this. Would you consider changing it again? So.
Well, certainly, and I know Joanne's looking for as much comment as she can get so that we craft this as best we can for Monday, whether it's the impact fee deferrals, whether it's Resolution 926, whether it's any of that. It would be very helpful as we go out with our hat in our hands, trying to attract folks to the community, that these agenda bills get as much support as they possibly can without people wondering, well, what did that vote mean? What did that really mean? Because we definitely want to be going out there and being able to promote the East County as much as we possibly can in a very hard sell scenario.
Is everybody cool with the 18 months versus the comment up to the side that Greenlee and Shoemaker wanted 3 to 5 years for this trial?
I think 18 months may be too short. That's just my take on it. I wouldn't have any problem with the initial trial period being a couple of years long.
Well, Joanne, what does the economy do to that particular thing? I mean, the economy seems to be brought up every time. well, in 18 months, maybe nothing changes from what we have today. And we haven't really had a chance to exercise this thing.
Right, I don't think putting in there a certain amount of time will prohibit you from opening it up at any time.
Yep.
I mean, but I think for a measurement standard, I think both council members' opinion that 18 months is too short, I agree with that. I agree with that for measurement purposes. Because if nothing happens, even with this incentive, if it's because of the economy, really, we're not getting a good measurement. So, but I don't think that if you say you're gonna open it up in 3 years to look at it again, I don't think that means you can't look at it in a year.
I would hope that we would have flexibility both directions as a group.
Wow, it's working, let's leave it.
Well, that's the other side of how well is it working? It's working really well, great.
Right.
We don't really have any downsides, we haven't experienced any problems.
So we just
Then
strike
let's
3
make sure
years.
that we, take that out a little bit farther.
On page 4, Councilmember Shoemaker would like to discuss the section where it talks about where you could modify it or extend it, and I had written with approval from City Council. Did you want to discuss that, Mr. Shoemaker?
I had difficulty hearing what it is that we wanted to
Oh, I'm
discuss.
sorry. You had mentioned where I had put in there that this agreement could be modified or extended, or the term,
Yeah, by the council, right?
yes, I had put it in there that it had to be approved by council.
And my question was, why didn't we delegate that responsibility to the staff, to the director?
And my response to you was that, although you may trust me, you don't know who your director could be tomorrow, and do you really want to give that power away? Now, because it is a exception from this agreement, although your point was,
My point was that the council is a policy-making body, not a day-to-day,
Enforcement, not day-to-day enforcement.
yes, absolutely. And so that's what the staff's function is, and I say, let them do it,
True for the mayor or his designee.
absolutely.
Yeah, there's something there to consider, though, that if we are the policymaking body, this would, on some level, potentially be policymaking itself. Because the whole idea about the length of the deferment is policy. And so if we're going to adjust that length of a deferment, there is a certain amount of policy that we're changing there.
I agree.
So on some level, yeah, and
Bring that back.
it's a good question, but you've got a good point.
We make policy all the time, and it's his place to enforce it, not
That's
ours.
true, that's very true.
In this case, it's even beyond policy, it's law.
My concern is that I would like to have a legal opinion from WCIA on this, because one of the reasons that we went from council making zoning and code decisions to using a hearing examiner is because it cuts down our liability tremendously.
So could that deferment be run through the?
Well,
Hearing examiner.
he then needs law to tell him how to decide. A hearing examiner looks at the law and says yes, no, based on the law. Councils get into trouble when the neighbor has